today's World Insight with Tian Wei, an inter-Korean summit is underway. Can the leaders of DPRK and South Korea bring Trump on board their peace process? And who are the world's AI superpowers? We find out with Dr. Kai-Fu Lee in an exclusive interview.
For products, the Chinese companies have not only become competitive, but in many cases, better than the American competitor.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you from Beijing on CGTN. This Tuesday saw the opening of the second Inter-Korean Summit this year. DPRK leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in attended the three-day summit in Pyongyang. Earlier this month, Kim announced his first timeline for denuclearization, which aimed to complete the process by the end of U.S. President Donald Trump's first term in early 2021. Do these peaceful gestures from the DPRK indicate that peace on Korean Peninsula is finally at hand? Let's take a look.
On the first day of a three-day visit, Moon held talks with Kim at the headquarters of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea. Moon has said his goal is to break a deadlock in talks between the U.S. and the DPRK. He was welcomed by Kim at the airport. Tens of thousands of people applauded and waved flowers as the two leaders paraded through Pyongyang. But Kim says he is hoping for a big outcome.
The warm welcome for President Moon Jae-in means that our people are hoping for faster and bigger outcomes, like the outcomes we have achieved together so far. I think we should not forget the people's hopes and expectations, but have to work at a faster pace and make bigger achievements.
If South Koreans get to see the people from the DPRK warmly welcoming us, they'll be very proud and touched. They will also think that this summit will bear abundant fruit.
For more discussion on Moon-Kim meeting, we are joined in Beijing, Zhao Tong, Associate at the Carnegie Tsinghua Center for Global Policy. In Seoul, Dr. June Park, Research Fellow on Northeast Asia at the Key Research Institute at Seoul National University Asia Center. She's also non-resident James Kelly Korea Fellow of Pacific Forum CSIS. Joining us in Los Angeles, Jonathan Pollack, non-resident Senior Fellow in the Center for East Asia Policy Studies at John Thornton China Center, Brookings Institution. Welcome to the three of you. Well, Dr. Park, I want to begin with you because we're talking about North and South Summit. It is very likely that the South might propose a joint Olympic, the latest news suggests. What would that mean?
Well, I don't think it means anything more than a rapprochement endeavor from the Blue House. There is no complete consensus domestically with regard to the steps forward because of some of the concerns having to do with the budget proposal that the Blue House has laid out with regard to economic cooperation with North Korea.
Mr. Pollack, coming from the U.S. perspective, what do you make of these and other gestures coming from Seoul about North and South possibilities?
Well, I think that President Moon feels under increasing pressure to justify and to substantiate what he is trying to do in inter-Korean relations domestically as much as internationally. I think his concerns here, his stating that he wants to play a mediating role between the United States and North Korea shows that, I think, betrays a certain anxiety on his part that his hopes here for some kind of a major breakthrough really hang on the balance. And as a consequence, he's making big promises, but he's not coming with the kind of support domestically in South Korea that was evident at the start of this process. And that's fundamentally what he faces right now. Some of this is out of his hands. He knows that, but he's got to put a brave face on it recognizing that if he doesn't, things could go in a much more negative direction.
Right. Before I go to the Chinese guest, Mr. Zhao, let me come back to you, Dr. Park, about the domestic politics going on in Seoul right now. We understand, Dr. Park, that the jobless rate inside South Korea actually has been going up quite dramatically over the past few years. Some even suggest historical high. So economic picture does not necessarily look beautiful to the current Blue House. However, we also see that Seoul has been playing quite an instrumental role in placing some of the parties much closer together, such as the United States and Pyongyang through its special envoy. So, Dr. Park, domestically, internationally, which card will be the best card to play for the president right now?
I think he is in a limbo with regard to the economic conditions in South Korea. Of course, South Korea has had weaknesses in some parts of its economic fundamentals in the previous decade, and that is regardless of whether Moon Jae-in was president or somebody else was president, that would have been the case anyway. But some of the public policies that he has sort of put forward during his presidential term does not really signal to some of the alleviations on the stress on the economy, and that is surely putting him in a very dire spot. With regard to what kind of card he should play, I think for now, all he can do is, as Dr. Pollack just mentioned, is to go on with the program as planned, because right now, otherwise, without South Korea stepping in, North Korea and the U.S. cannot really come to, they can't even meet halfway, because the demands from the U.S. and the demands from North Korea are quite different.
Right. Everybody has a domestic and an international audience to talk to, right? I mean, Mr. Zhao, you know all this very well on the issue of the Korean Peninsula denuclearization. At this point, what role do you think Seoul is really playing, particularly the president, Moon Jae-in, is really playing now?
I think President Moon has a sense of urgency. He knows that he only has about 3 years or so left in his term, presidential term, and there's a lot to be done. So he wants to push things forward as much as possible. So we see him in proposing this joint Olympic Games application. He doesn't really care about the results, but he wants to squeeze in as much as possible. He wants to keep this momentum going. I think that's important for him. He knows that it would be a far distance before anything subsequent can be achieved on denuclearization. But even if some incremental process, such as the limitation on North Korea's capability, a better inter-Korean relationship, a less confrontational North Korean-US relationship will be a great process that can be written into history.
Well, it seems that everybody is having a time issue. If you think about Donald Trump, who, of course, has been putting a lot of beautiful words surrounding the June summit with the North Korean leader. If you look at the South Korea's timetable, of course, President Moon has to prove himself to be important and also constructive. If you look at Mr. Zhao, the agenda coming from the other governments, meanwhile, these are very important times, but the question is, will the details be able to be worked out during this very short time frame, Mr. Zhao?
I think apparently other countries, including Russia and Japan, also have some sense of urgency. They don't want to be left out, so we see some works being done to arrange a summit meeting between Russia and North Korea and Japan and North Korea. But for the two most important players, North Korea and the United States, on the North Korean part, I think a key question is whether North Korea feels that the time is on its side. I think previously I used to believe that North Korea wants to move things very quickly forward because there is a big opportunity coming up, which is the UN General Assembly meeting in New York in late this month. If Kim Jong-un can go to that meeting, he would have a historical opportunity to show himself as international leader, to meet with other heads of states on the sidelines of UN meeting. That would be very effective to break North Korea's current diplomatic isolation. But if he wants to achieve that, he needs to make a quick breakthrough on North Korea-U.S. bilateral relationship. But if he doesn't really care about that meeting, then he don't really need to rush things, right? He's now already in a relatively comfortable place. The U.S. sanction is on, but he has cooperation from other regional countries that can keep the North Korean economy going without any big crisis. So if he's not in a hurry, then we probably won't see much immediate progress.
I have to say, Mr. Zhao, you're too much in a hurry compared to what is on the timetable of President Kim coming from the DPRK. If you think about the UNGA in just the end of September. Dr. Park, about that, I mean, if you look at the last summit between the North and the South, it was dramatic. It was warm. It was instrumental in a way. It broke the ice and it put hope on the overall process. And yet, the question is, what's next? Because this meeting, the coming up meeting, is supposed to be much more concrete than the last time, which is all about gesture, which is all about drama, Dr. Park. Anything concrete be done at all, Dr. Park?
I think that the Moon administration would be very pressured from the United States with regard to what kind of measures should be laid out in sort of like a responsibility list for North Korea, and the request from the U.S. side to label every nuclear facility plus arsenals and submit it to the United States may be a little bit too far-fetched for North Korean standards. What they are hoping for is an alleviation of the economic tension, sort of the stress on the economy, and the Moon administration would have to sort of balance between trying to lessen the demands from both sides so that they can meet halfway. That's the only option that the Moon administration has in this mediation process. And from the North Korean side, it is highly unlikely, going back to UNGA, there is almost no real reason for Kim Jong-un to leave his seat and just show up there unless he has big agendas for denuclearization himself in a very true manner.
Right.
Because if he fails to do so, he would be lying on the global stage.
But having said all of this, there is a huge difference, Mr. Polak, about the sequence, how things should take place, let's just say between DPRK and the United States. I mean, the question is, what can Seoul do, right? I mean, the United States is saying, at least the Trump administration, okay, you do this, 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 and this, and eventually we're going to say, oh, well, we have a peace agreement. But the DPRK is saying, let's make sure step by both sides. So there is a huge difference in nature. How strong President Moon has to be in order to be able to bring these two huge differences together? It's very much a big question.
Yes. I think, though, you need to look at American policy at two very, very distinct levels. One is what we are hearing from President Trump himself personally, and the other is what we are hearing from the bureaucracy of the United States government, including some of his closest advisors. There's an increasing gap here between President Trump repeatedly insisting that there's great forward movement, that he and Chairman Kim have a close relationship, they can achieve big things, and the reality that there has been no movement, and that there is, we should say at least, deep skepticism on the part of National Security Advisor John Bolton, and also on Secretary of State Pompeo's part, who, of course, when Trump canceled Pompeo's visit to North Korea, it was an acknowledgement that things were not going swimmingly, to say the least. So Trump has a big investment in this. He feels that this is his big breakthrough, but very frankly, with all the talk of another summit between Kim and Trump, if a second summit is rushed, if it is poorly prepared as the last one, to be frank, then the consequences here could be very, very great, especially for politicians who have to look at their domestic political circumstances and timetable, whether that's Donald Trump or whether that's Moon Jae-in, for both of them.
Well, Mr. Zhao, when the South Korean president, Mr. Moon, is acting as a go-betweener to a certain extent, how much credibility he is putting himself there in order to get the two sides talk to one another? I mean, the two sides seem to do not enjoy the same amount of credibility as he does as a fresh politician on the international stage. So there's an enormous amount of political risk, and meanwhile, can really people take what he's saying seriously? Because he's not really the final decision makers, at least in the directions where the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue is going.
I think you're absolutely right. President Moon is facing real challenges because President Trump did, in fact, appear he was making decisions on impulses. He doesn't even face realities, right? In the book of Woodward revealed that on the Iran nuclear issue, he was told repeatedly by his advisor that Iran was complying with the Iran deal, but President Trump just responded, no, they are in violations, right? So you cannot even talk facts into him. That's a real challenge. But I think there are some real things that President Moon can do to move things forward. A big concern that is dragging American feet towards moving another step in the form of declaring the end of war is the concern that after this declaration, North Korea might take advantage of this declaration and push for U.S. troop withdrawal from the Korean Peninsula, and how that would affect the future of U.S.-South Korean alliance relationship. In this regard, President Moon can, I think, have a candid discussion with the U.S. part about the future, possible future scenarios for the bilateral alliance relationship, because the U.S.-South Korean alliance is built on their common hostility towards North Korea. So now if North-South inter-Korean relations becomes better, naturally there's a big challenge how to continue or what should change for the alliance. I think those big questions should be discussed candidly, at least in theory, right? They need to lay out all the possible options and talk things through. I think that will help reassure the United States and can play an important role in pushing North Korea and the United States together.
Well, but, Dr. Park, will President Moon be that imaginative? Will President Kim, together in a talk with President Moon, enjoying being imaginative?
Maybe you're considering the concept of maybe creativity with regard to the policymaking process. And so that kind of creativity and the range of options are not really in their hands as of now, because here are these two sides who are having a very hard time to come to an agreement, and there is this mediator who claims to be sort of helping both sides, facilitating the process, but there are very limited options as to how to push things forward. Okay, peace treaty may be one option, ending the war, and that may bring about some positive discord from positive responses from the South Korean public, especially those who have been in the war or who have remnants of the war in their family history and whatnot. However, there is a lot of challenge ahead domestically with regard to pushing this any more further. Economic cooperation-wise, there's the budget, and also on the Panmunjom Declaration, having to pass it in the National Assembly, that's another challenge. So bipartisanship in this regard is so much required for Moon at the moment, but sort of he's putting his credibility down the line.
But on the other hand, Mr. Zhao from Beijing, as you might have some knowledge about what's going on in DPRK, you see President Kim also has been adopting, to a certain extent, very similar approach that his American counterpart, President Trump, has been using. He's also in a letter through the special envoy coming from South Korea presenting to President Trump, suggesting the DPRK is still optimistic about doing something very positive even before the end of the very first term of President Trump. He's talking up about the hope as well. On the one hand, he might have the necessity to do that because he doesn't want to change his counterpart to discuss with in the future. But on the other hand, is this also a two-sides approach coming from Pyongyang, Dr. Zhao?
Well, I think Chairman Kim is basically adopting the same tactic that everyone is adopting towards the U.S. president. That is basically to praise the U.S. president into further cooperation. Right? Kim was so transparent in his strategy. He even said, "I never, even in private occasions, criticize President Trump." So clearly, he wanted to drive a wedge between President Trump and all his advisors who oppose or who are more hesitant about further engagement with North Korea. And so far, it appears that his strategy is working.
Yeah. Well, the DPRK and South Korea are interacting with one another. How the other parties would react and eventually act. Mr. Pollack, your assessment briefly.
Well, again, I think that the two Koreas, in some sense, would like to drive this dynamic if they could, but there are much bigger forces here that are at stake, are involved. Although necessarily you have to have the two Koreas dealing with one another, if this is in the absence of any kind of tangible and sustained movement between the United States and North Korea, it's going to put enormous stress on the alliance between the United States and South Korea, and really put President Moon under great political pressure. So there are a lot of, should we say, balls in the air right now, and there's a lot that could go wrong, a lot of miscalculation could result. I think, if anything, the push that President Trump might himself make towards an early summit suggests his own political vulnerabilities, his own belief that somehow, if he can sustain this process, it's going to solidify his stance as he heads into the 2020 presidential election. That's a very, very big risk. It presumes a lot on the part of what North Korea is prepared to do. So I, for one, would be very, very cautious about where we are. We may, I mean, although there's a lot of talk about breakthrough and so forth, but talk is talk. That's only one thing. There's a lot of action that has to occur.
Before we go, also final words coming from the other two panelists. The one sentence, if you can. What is the thing that you are really looking at closely about that summit? Dr. Park, one sentence.
The peace treaty may be something that a lot of people, regardless of political interests from any side, is looking for, but wishful thinking on this is not really advised.
Dr. Zhao, one sentence.
Yeah, the one thing I'll be looking for is whether Chairman Kim will repeat his commitment to the denuclearization timeline. He reportedly said he would like to achieve that by 2021. That would be a great commitment from North Korea, real commitment. So if he repeats that, I think that's a real indicator that he's serious.
Okay, Zhao Tong, June Park, Jonathan Pollack, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. Who are the world's AI superpowers? We find out with Dr. Kai-Fu Lee in an exclusive interview. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. The Summer Davos is dedicated to innovation every year, which is the most important strength of any nation or economy. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is one of the biggest topics this year. But will it be more about competition or cooperation? Is the future of AI as tempting as we have been told? Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, one of China's most prominent figures in China's internet sector, is more than excited to share his answers to those questions with us. Well known as venture capitalist and a technology executive, Lee started his exploration with AI decades ago as a PhD student when he developed the world's first speaker-independent continuous speech recognition system. Now he finally made public his ties to AI with his latest book, AI Superpowers. You started, Dr. Lee, research about AI back in 1992, if I remember right.
That was my first product demonstration.
Right, and before that, you were already writing papers about artificial intelligence.
Yes, in the 80s, yes.
Wow. Have you ever thought about, at the time when you were doing your research back in the end of 1980s, where AI is already what it is today, and it has already become the centerpiece of even geopolitical debate?
That's right. Yeah, we joke in our industry that back in the 80s and 90s, whatever worked in AI became engineering and product. AI was all the things left that didn't work. But today, everybody wants to put an AI label or on every product.
Tag.
Yeah, so it's good to finally have to be in this era of AI.
You work for Microsoft, Google, and now you are your own entrepreneur for almost 9 years.
Yes.
So you've seen the changes going on in the field and how big corporations like those are working with AI.
Yeah, I see a very widespread adoption in a number of key industries. First and foremost is the internet industry, because that's where there's a massive amount of data, and the initial application area for the likes of Google, Facebook, Alibaba, and Tencent, because they have so much data coming in, and by tweaking AI, money basically comes out of the AI engine by having more users, more click-through, more profit. And then there are a couple of other industries that I think are going to be adopting AI over the next 10 years or so. One is financial industry, because of the virtual nature of the financial games and the large data nature. After that will be the retail industry, not just online but offline, because again there's real profits coming out of the machine if you can know what users want. After that will be the health industry, in terms of using AI in every way, but mostly to make us healthier and help doctors have a better diagnosis. And then after that would be manufacturing, basically replacing a lot of the repetitive work that's done in the factories with smart robots that can build products more efficiently, dependably, and also lower costs. And then a very, very big one, a little bit later, is automotive industry, as the car becomes autonomous and drives itself. And that will disrupt everything related to transportation, ride-sharing, logistics, trucks. So this will be a very large disruption that will happen in phases over the next 10 to 15 years.
I see. How do you see the Chinese ones, for example, companies that are based in China, like Tencent, like Baidu, like Alibaba, be able to have this, in a way, a freedom of time before the multinationals, such as Google and Microsoft, displace their large operations in China? Or rather, is there a chance for the latter group to even have that opportunity anymore?
I think the China internet market will, for the foreseeable future, be largely run by Chinese companies.
Why would you say so?
Because of the very strong product suite. Tencent's WeChat product is better than Facebook's Messenger and WhatsApp products. Sina's Weibo product is better than Twitter's product. So product for product, the Chinese companies have not only become competitive, but in many cases better than the American competitor.
You described the United States, which is the pioneer in the quote-unquote discovery stage of AI. And now what you believe is the implementation stage of AI, and China plays a pivotal role. What exactly do you mean?
In the 1995 to maybe 2010, U.S. played a dominant global leadership position because all the efforts to find those discoveries were largely driven by America. But starting about 2010, people started taking the proven ideas over the era of discovery and cherry-picking them for implementation.
Yes.
And then when it comes to implementation, China has a substantial advantage because it has a larger group of hungrier entrepreneurs, as well as a large market which generates a lot of data. And no matter which AI algorithm you use, their ability to perform well depends more on having a huge amount of training data. It's almost like the rocket fuel for AI. So in the age of implementation, China has some advantages. The recent challenges we see that began with a number of U.S. policies about more restrictive environment in the U.S., I think in all the technological areas may become a barrier. However, in the area of AI, I don't think that would be the case.
Why not?
Because the already discovered technologies, whether it was invented by an American, Canadian, French, or Chinese, are in the public area. They have been published, and many of the source codes has been opened. And both China and U.S. have been using that open source of knowledge for some time. And that open source approach to AI is partly what got it to move so quickly in the last 5 to 10 years. So that part is out in the open, and the people are honing their skills to see if they can use the open source code, tweak it for a domain, and then use a lot of data to build good applications. So no trade barrier is going to stop that.
You have gone through a lot.
Yes.
Not only as a manager, as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, but also, you know, just personal experience as well. You were struggling between work and life. You are also struggling with cancer. Now you come out of it, congratulations.
Thank you.
But you jump back right into work again,
Yes.
even though priorities have been shifting over the years. What do you make of this? You know, our human beings' capability, adapting to what we really want at heart, and the fact that we can now work with technology, but to what extent can it really help us, or make us even more helpless?
I think for many decades or even centuries, we have been telling ourselves work is a key center of our very existence. And the age of AI will actually shatter that belief, because a lot of people's work will be disrupted by AI, especially those with routine, repetitive jobs. So I think it is time to rethink, is work really the center of our existence? It's certainly one of the important things we do, but if we make it the center, then if AI were to take our job away, then we're not only faced with a loss of income, but a loss of meaning. I mean, if my meaning depends purely on my job, and my job is gone because AI can do it better, then why am I here? And that could cause a large number of people to feel unhappy, depressed, and even fall into substance abuse. So I think we need to collectively rethink what's the most important thing in our lives. And when I faced death and had cancer, work wasn't a part of me at all. It was totally unimportant to me, and I saw how foolish it was for me to make my life depend only on work, and that things I treasured as I faced disease and cancer were really the love of my family and friends, and that's something I think we need to cherish a lot more.
Dr. Li, you worked for the corporate world. You also have been working as an entrepreneur on your own. You witnessed 20 years of China's reform and opening up, different political stages as well. Do you still remember when you came to China's mainland, 1998?
Yes.
What it was like? What kinds of technologies were most popular then?
I think it was all about the PC.
It was all about the PC.
Executives would come to Zhongguancun, which at the time was just a lot of shops that put PCs together and then loaded lots of software onto them. And those markets are minimal right now. And many of them, including the building that I work in, used to be a market for selling PC parts and customized PCs. Now it's VCs and incubators and accelerators and entrepreneurs. I think the shift from 98 to today, the 20 years, we've witnessed Zhongguancun grow from a large electronics market into one of the 2 top centers of entrepreneurship in the world.
What is the biggest takeaway, you think, with this 20 years of being in China, in the tech world, entrepreneurship, see the debates evolving?
Well, for me, it was very fortunate that I was here during this most amazing 20 years, that things...
And you played a part of it.
I was fortunate to have played a part in it. I think what we see is speed, execution, nimbleness that I've never seen anywhere else in the world. And I see it with amazement, and I go back and think about what life was like 20 years ago, and really we've made phenomenal progress.
Where do you think the country should be going, if you have a chance?
Well, I think embracing fundamental technologies and rethink education, because with all the things that are going well for China, basic research is an area China is not yet co-leading the world. And the universities have improved a lot, but there's still a large gap with the best schools in US and Europe. And I think redoubling the energy to go into these areas, and also taking advantage of what we now know with the era of AI is coming. Why don't we use AI to leapfrog in parts of education? Why don't we invest in professions and skills that are more useful in the AI era, rather than just trying to copy the best of Western universities and high schools?
Way to go. Thank you so much, Dr. Li, for being with us. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. That is Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, the author of the latest book, AI Superpowers. Artificial intelligence is one of the most important topics for this year's Summer Davos. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Inside CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Inside team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for insights across China and across the world.